So I think I was asked to talk about business cases for transport innovation. This touches on that, but also goes into procurement as well, because we've just done a big procurement in innovation, or an innovation partnership procurement, which sort of links procurement and business case together. And I'd done these slides, and I didn't want to make new ones, so here we go. I suppose we've been quite successful in getting innovation funding in our teams in Oxfordshire. We started out about 5 years ago. We just didn't tell anyone what we were doing, so that's the first rule: don't tell anyone, just get on and do it. Second rule: find good partners, talk to lots and lots of people, and find somebody who can write a good bid. There you go, that's business case for innovation done. So I think the main thing is to talk to as many people as possible. We spent the first 2 years talking, probably. I think we submitted 5 different bids. We won one very small one. We won one brilliant one that Innovate K turned down and shouldn't have, and it was their mistake, and they're still regretting it, I'm sure. Even that one that was turned down spurned a community interest company that's been very important in Oxfordshire, and a number of other projects, and it particularly helped us focus on the opportunities of autonomous vehicles in Oxfordshire, and also our role as a council, in that we needed to be getting involved in innovation, both to understand what was coming up and how we prepare in terms of transport policy and what we do as a council and authority managing the network, but also from an economic growth perspective. So part of this is, I suppose, some of the theories around living labs, if you want to call it that, but it's the idea that you can find people who will solve some of your problems, and if you can retain them in your local area, you're also supporting economic growth, so you are getting, a triple win. And in Oxfordshire, to be honest, it's something we weren't doing very well, and that was a ridiculous thing. We've got 2 of the best universities on our doorstep. Lots of research was happening elsewhere, but being done in Oxford. So we've been successful, but we should be successful, I would say, because we're in Oxford. And if you can't do it in Oxford, then I always say you might as well give up. So I think that's one of the things that, we are in an advantage. Some places you won't have a university on the doorstep, but I bet you will have universities that are interested in your subject matter. So although we have Oxford University on the doorstep, we actually have projects with 10 different universities, because all of them have different subject matter interests, and that's the key for us. So don't limit it to what's on your doorstep. Don't go and find the experts. Do lots of these events, and you'll soon build up your knowledge. I would say the network's a lot better now than it was 5 years ago, so you can come and talk to us, and we'll go, I'll talk to these people. Whereas I think 5 years ago, we were just wandering blindly around, hoping that we find someone. So that's the first thing. I suppose I've gone through this stuff. What we also did as well is, in Oxfordshire, we built up our local network at the same time. So we started Smart Oxford, which was much broader than transport, but it's on the same principle. There was a lot of interest in doing things in Oxford. There wasn't really a support network to do it. Also, we kept going around conferences in these early days, and people were saying, we're a smart city, and we were going, well, we're doing that already. I didn't know that was smart. So we thought we'll at least put all these projects together to raise awareness, because it's the world we're in. There's a bit of brand element to all of this, so if you're seen as doing good things, people come to you. It makes your life a lot easier further down the road as well, so you have to do less going to talk to people, and people come to talk to you as well. So I think that's something we're not very good at that in the public sector, but it's about positive comms. And I know most people's communications team do not know that, and they don't even know how to do that. It's because it's all about firefighting, and don't tell anyone anything positive because it might be taken negatively. So you have to tackle that as well. Again, don't tell anyone, just say it, just get it out there, or go and find a cabinet member who is supportive of that and just use them. Go around all the walls that are in place in local government, because there's tons of them. So these are all the things that we've learned, and some of them have got better, some of them we still do. So I think in the background, that's just a map to know, hopefully everyone knows where Oxford is, but we're in the middle of a lot of growth area, so we have big pressures but lots of opportunities. Also what we did, and that's really key to building up the approach, the internal support, is we embedded this thinking into policy. So 3-4 years ago, we updated our last local transport plan. Within that, we adopted a policy called Science Transit Strategy. That's an adopted policy that has policies around autonomous vehicle, mobility service, data, even things like quantum computing. It doesn't have a policy saying we are going to do it or we are going to deliver X number of autonomous vehicles. It's a policy of supporting innovation and learning. So it's, the key bit of that, I suppose, is innovation in transport, because if we can adopt innovation, then you lead to intelligent mobility and hopefully more efficient use of our infrastructure. And I think that's been really important, because that gave us support from members, essentially. Even if maybe some of them didn't know what they were adopting, they thought it was a good idea. And that is really important, because that's fundamental. Then in your business cases, you can always honestly bid that the council is supportive of the approach you're doing. And yeah, so that was really fundamentally important. It's going to be interesting now. We're updating our new local transport plan, so we're just having a debate of how we embed that. I think we're trying to not have a sort of separate policy statements on it, and it be more embedded in the local transport plan, as it's something that just should be done as business as usual as much as anything. So yeah, we'll see how that evolves. So specifically talking about something we've done recently. So this links into, I suppose, everything we try to do. So the work we've been doing with innovative projects has shown us a different way of delivering projects. So it's a completely different way of thinking about problems and also going about delivering them. So I suppose we've grown up enough now to realise there's lots of opportunity with our own spend and the things we do. So we don't necessarily need government money. We'll never turn down government money, but what we've been trying to do is embed innovation in the day-to-day things that we do. So my area also manages the transport model. It was coming out of date recently, and we decided to look at modelling in general, because it's such a big area of change. It's one of the areas where there's probably the most, or one of the highest number of sort of startups and innovative companies developing around data, how we use data to manage our networks. So we thought we should do something different this time. The last time round when we did our model, we pushed the market to use mobile phone data, and we had the first county-wide model built on mobile phone data, but we didn't really benefit from that. We effectively funded the private sector's R&D, and didn't really benefit other than getting the model. You know, they did a good job, but I didn't see much return for us as an investor. So that was one of the things. I think we don't always think about our investment as an investment that's as key as, say, from the private sector. If we're pushing things forward, we should get some direct return from that. Shouldn't necessarily go back to shareholders, unless we're a shareholder. So we went around use case, user-first design. So this is important, because this is probably something you should do for all business cases. So this is why this is important. Just going back to the fundamentals of what do you need out of your project. If you can't go through this process, then it's probably not going to be innovative, therefore you're not going to get the funding. So try to sort of link to what's new, what problem are you trying to solve, and what do you want out of the project. And if you get that from all your partners, then there's a good chance you will get funding, because it'll tick Innovate UK's boxes or Horizon 2020's. So for the model, we wanted to change things. We wanted to take advantage of all the new opportunities in real-time data, where the market was moving in terms of modelling. And we wanted to push the market. So it's really an open questions to the market to say, is this possible? Can you respond to a bid? They may have come back and gone, no, it's not. Thankfully, because we sort of used this collaborative approach, so we did lots of consortium sessions, lots of open sessions directly with the market. We had one-to-ones with 60 different companies. It was a lot of time and a lot of effort, but it was worth it to understand what they needed and what they wanted from us. And so the process went through encouraging consortiums to come together, And we ended up with 9 consortiums of 30 companies that bidded. 5 went through to full bids, which was really interesting. The one thing that I suppose that was different from some of the ones that we looked at before in terms of modelling is things like the revenue generating element. We wanted to really explore that to make sure that what we were doing was utilised better. So at the moment, our transport models are used sometimes by developers. That's it. We found in understanding the commercial market side of transport models and its potential needs is there's a desire for many different people to use a transport model to test their commercial operations if they're a transport operator, even other services like NHS, social care. So there's lots of opportunities that we thought were untapped because the tool available wasn't actually very accessible or usable. So the other thing we needed was a user end that was really usable. And the key thing, linking us back into traditional business case, it still needed to be able to do the business case bit. So we wanted something that's really new, exciting, completely different, but still did what the EFT wanted, which was quite traditional. So it was a bit of a question of, can you do everything? But so we had key fundamentals, but the idea was we're building off a baseline, and also talking and collaborating with partners to work out what we can actually do at the beginning and then grow from that point. So this isn't them saying, here's the money, you build this by then. It's more, here's the money, we'll get as far as we can, and then we keep building on top of that. So we'll look for investment. So we see this as seed investment, to be honest, as if we were an investor rather than a council investing in buying a single product. So it's not about doing it all in 12 months. It's getting as far as we can. Some baselines being that we need to run business cases through it, and it needs to be easy to use by people who aren't transport modelers, because that was one of the fundamental issues we had at the start. So we were also really interested as well, we really wanted to push the market as well. So this is where we get into the more innovative things to see what maybe we could do, not necessarily in 18 months' time, but over a course of a long-term partnership with the consortium. And that's looking at real-time analytics, bringing in data, real-time data, multiple data sets to get to something completely different where it becomes more of a network management tool. So we're aligning this alongside our other innovative projects and also our GovTech project, which is looking at network management, to see this as a key module that might get us to the position in maybe 5 years' time, where we have real-time analytics helping to manage our network. Because in Oxfordshire, if anyone knows Oxfordshire, it's a very constrained network and we can't build our way out of it, so we've got to manage it better. And we're also looking at various different data sets, so things like cycling and walking data sets, to see if you can manage them better, to give them more space, more safety, better routes. So it's all around managing our network and giving people better options as well. And again, this isn't defined in the thing we must do by the end of year 2. This is about almost open-ended, but with an ambition to do it in 5-10 years. So it was quite an interesting process we went through. It's taken 18 months. It's quite painful sometimes. But I would say the good thing is doing all the Innovate UK projects would really helped us prepare to get us ready to do this. Because essentially we were sort of taking the Innovate UK SBRI process and put it into our own procurement. That's how I would see it. So the sort of key lessons were fundamental for both elements. So we've spent a long time doing it. We've used Innovation Procurement Partnership to get to where we are so far. We've got 1.4 million, which is more than we had last time, because we managed to convince the council that we'd spend a little bit more as a sort of R&D spend, only a little bit. But now is an expectation this is going to be really successful and we'll be able to pay that back. So there's a bit of pressure internally, but again, that's no different to if an investor was coming in. So it's sort of something the consortium partners understand. We selected the consortium last month, and it was interesting. So we had lots of different types of consortiums. The one that came up has some companies you'll recognise and some you probably won't recognise. For us, because we're positioned in the Oxford-Cambridge arc, or the England's economic heartland, depending on what we're talking about, it came out really nicely because there's 2 Cambridge companies, 2 Oxford, and 1 from Milton Keynes. So that had nothing to do with the score, it just coincidental. But there's a real interesting mix from the companies and the skill sets there. And it's going to be really interesting to see how it goes. The key thing for us is this is always about learning. So we will learn through every stage. The first stage is an R&D phase, and then we get a sort of stop-go point. So we can award after the R&D, or we could decide that we've done proof of concept, and actually this was crazy, and it sort of fails, and then we have to go and hide somewhere because we'll get really told off. But then we'll look at a different solution. We hope it won't fail. But yeah, so you do an R&D phase, and then you can direct award to consortium after that phase. The key thing as well is this isn't a closed consortium, so we expect this to be pretty open. So we expect over the life of the consortium partnership to bring in other partners. So it's not about doing everything. There are people who are really good pedestrian modelers, for instance, who we will probably plug in. There are people who bring in some different types of data sources. We'll bring them in. So it's an open partnership, and as technology develops, we'd expect we'd bring in other partners as well. So it's not a sort of closed partnership. It's about having an open partnership and building a product or a tool that's as open as possible that hopefully could be seen as a baseline to be used elsewhere. So yeah, so we'll see you next year and see if it works. Cool, that's it.
Okay, thanks, Carla. And I'm pleased that Llewellyn covered a lot of the touch points that I may well cover this morning. A bit of background about myself. I've been working more than 40 years. I know it doesn't look like it, but half that time has been in the public sector and half it's in the private sector. And the thing that I've learned is that each organisation has a different view of what a business case is and how you might make that up. And whether it's you're building a transport project and you need to satisfy things like the DFT process, or whether you're bidding for Innovate UK projects, then they have a set of rules that you need to fit in with. But underpinning that, you need as an organisation to understand what it is that you're going to get out of that. And I'll mention the word profit once, okay, and not again. It's not about that. It's about creating value. And it's also about return on investment. And that means different things to different people. And I was thinking of focusing really on the organisations, because as Carla put a hand up earlier, or asked you to put your hand up, there's different organisations in this room. So everybody will have a different view of what is important in a business case. And if you see the successful Innovate UK projects, it's an understanding of the partners that are in that consortium to recognise what's important to the others and the other participants so that everybody can get something out of it. And hopefully I can touch on that in one of the projects. But this diagram is trying to show that there's different organisations here. You might have a local authority who wants to bid for something, and you can either go for internal funding, which Llewellyn mentioned that, but there's also an external funder, Innovate UK. And each of those two funding organisations will have a different objective that they're trying to achieve. And if you move down to how these projects are delivered, in the delivery stage, you might have a supplier, which is some of the technology suppliers. You might have a contractor who's going to put stuff in. There might be a consultant advisor who's helping with various aspects. And also you might have academia. And I'm going to look at some of the key areas that they might think are valuable in terms of return on investment for those organisations. But then once you've delivered that transport innovation, it's not about just delivering the innovation itself. It's how you're going to use it to improve the networks, improve the efficiency of what we're trying to achieve. Again, achieving different objectives. It might be low carbon economy. It might be reducing congestion. It might be creating capacity. So there's lots of, it's a complex ecosystem that we're working in with lots of different organisations with a different view of the world. And clearly, the first part of the project delivery stage is often probably 1 to 2 years long. The operations is maybe 25 years long, operating these systems. And it's the operations where the benefits are realised, not necessarily in the delivery stage. So I've put up at the top here, it's creating value, doing good, which might be looking at things like the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And one of the things Arup is interested in is how we can, our work can improve society, as well as creating other types of value and return on investment. It's about being able to develop relationships. Showcasing the industry might be very important. Some of the Innovate UK projects have really been about that, how we show what we have as an industry and how valuable it is. But also it's about a sustainable business. It's not a one-off project. It might be a one-off initiative, but it's about creating a sustainable business for the participants that are in these projects. And finally, again, the return on investment is important. And I've tried to divide up these different sectors. Everybody might have a slightly different view as to which bullet points I've put in which boxes. And it's certainly not an exhaustive list in terms of objectives and things that people would see as a return on investment. But maybe we can go through a few of them. For the local authority, they might be really interested in the efficiency of the network or the efficiency of the operations. It might not just be transport, it might be some of the other services they're bringing. So it might be bringing data from the transport sector around how the education and how the health sector use transport, but actually bringing that back into local authorities to provide more efficient services. And also, local authorities have to achieve certain commitments, which the private sector might not need to, or Innovate UK or other funders might not need to. So they have a duty to the residents in achieving commitments as well. For an external funder, and I've sort of picked out a couple of things that I think Innovate UK look for out of their projects. It's about job creation for the whole of the UK PLC, putting UK PLC above our competitors. It's how the innovation or the project can create new jobs and therefore wealth. And it's about IP exploitation. They're very keen on developing IP, but it's no use just having created it, you've got to exploit it. And an example there might be one of the projects that, it's not Innovate UK, but a project Arup was involved in probably 10 years ago, working with New Zealand University to develop the contactless charging for vehicles. So inductive charging that's now been deployed in Milton Keynes on the electric buses. Arup was involved in the early exploitation of that or development of that IP, but realised we're not a product provider or a supplier, so sold on that IP to somebody who can actually take it further. So you might create the IP, but you need to think how it can be exploited to deliver value and return on investment. In the private sector, again, these are not exhaustive lists, but things that are quite important to a contractor, why you'd be interested in a project, is a track record. One, I haven't done this before. Two, I can see there's a market in the future. I want to be involved. I want to create some capability in that area. And again, it might be about safety. Contractors are very safety conscious. A lot of their reputation is based on how they deliver safe projects. So they might be interested in innovation around safety, which a lot of the others might not be a focus for them. So clearly they're different. A supplier might be a technology provider, and they're interested in a couple of things: IP creation, that they can then sell IP, or they can exploit it, but also a repeatable product. It's not about producing a one-off, they're looking to produce a million of, so it's a scalable project. So where in the transport innovation is that market of the future? And a consultant advisor, and this is where I'm in at the moment, and I've just been appointed this week to be Arup's global skills leader for intelligent mobility. And one of the pictures I made is that innovative projects or transport innovation projects that Innovate UK are a source of training and skills development for the future, for our people. So a return on investment for us would be developing skills, and particularly around, if I cite the One Transport project, we knew very little about IoT and how it can be used in transport, but we worked alongside providers, suppliers, that are skilled in that area that's allowed us to develop the capability. We brought the business case and the analytics to it, but actually artificial intelligence was something one of the partners brought, so we were able to understand how AI can be then applied in future projects. And it allows us to do thought leadership. So out of that particular project, we've probably presented at a dozen or more conferences in the UK and around the world, and we've contributed to 2 book chapters in 2 separate publications that have gone out. So we've actually improved our image in the marketplace through that project, and that was important to us in terms of a return on investment. And service delivery is around the operations, and mainly there wasn't that in the One Transport project, but they're interested in being more efficient. Over that 27, 28-year life cycle of a typical project, how can they reduce costs, be more efficient, and also provide a safer service at the time. Academia, at the bottom left, again, they're interested in IP creation, which does cross over some of the other areas, but also about knowledge management. And so they're interested in being able to raise their image, produce publications that support their other applications for funding and attract students. So that you can see that everybody has a different objective in how they would build their own business case, but there needs to be a recognition of how they are compatible within a project to deliver a successful bid. So a couple of slides about One Transport, and these are the accomplishments that were presented a couple of years ago, 18 months ago, when the project finished. And it was an industry first, a standard-based IoT-ready data marketplace. So that was a great accolade for the people involved in the project to be able to say we were involved in that, and it satisfied a lot of objectives. A national forum that is now leading the discourse on transport data importance. That's the Transport Data Initiative that was established out of the project. So the likes of Bucks and Oxford have got quite a bit of return on investment from being involved in the project around that objective. So have all the other partners. Developed demonstrations for 3 of the local authorities in the project, and also looked around winning international innovation. So it provided a lot of those, satisfied a lot of those objectives that those organisations have when we started off the project. And this just puts into context a little bit about the project. There was 11 partners, there was 5 private sector, 4 local authorities and 1 academia. So actually trying to find a win-win, and Highways England as well, made up the 11, trying to find a win-win for everybody so that they all wanted to contribute and really be proactive in developing the business case, but also in delivering the project, was a key component in why I believe that was successful. It engaged with 35 local authorities throughout its life before the TDI set off on its own, and it engaged with 16 national data owners. So it actually created a wider contact base for those organisations that were involved. So in summary, to me, the importance around developing a business case, it's bringing together the organisations to meet the funders' objectives. Otherwise, you won't get the funding in the first place. But it's confirming that the partners' individual objectives can be met. So we all have to work together to find some key things that they will get as a return on investment from the effort that they're putting in. And I think one thing that's also very important is confident of a scalable solution. It might not be the product itself that's scalable, but it might be the knowledge that's created out of it, it might be a byproduct that's out of it, but it's something that can continue beyond the one-off project, which is not what we're looking for in terms of return on investment. And finally, I'll just put up a slide around the Transport Technology Forum. So we're now working with the DFT for managing the Transport Technology Forum, and they've recognised one of the key things that they need to try and help is around developing business cases for investment and assessment. So all I'm saying from that slide is please look out for what the TTF are going to be doing in the future. They'll be doing it with the TDI and Innovate UK and the rest of the contact group, But it is recognised that local authorities and other organisations need a little bit more help around how you develop these business cases to be able to make the most of returning an investment on the input that's made. So thank you for that, and pass back to Carla. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. That was really useful because we will be hammering home a little bit about the collaboration point later on as well. But it's so important, and it's great to demonstrate there that everyone in the collaboration, they've got their different objectives, as Tim said, but they all bring their different skill sets to the table as well, and that's when the best projects really happen. Oh, the IT chap is just gone. I wondered if we could just flick to Menti. We have... I don't know if you're able to do it. I know Tim's not going to be available for the panel session later on. If you've got questions, you can either put them on Menti or email to tdi@buckscountycouncil.gov.uk. But if I can try and remember the question, Tim, it was about IP and with regards to, do you think there should be more open IP for government-funded projects, because the local authorities tend to lose the IP when they get involved? Hopefully I asked that correctly.
It was interesting, the IP around the One Transport project. Some of the partners brought some background IP to the project to start with, which clearly needs to remain with them because they will be using it for other projects outside. But there was IP created in the project by various partners, and in the end, there was a plan of how the IP will be used going forward and how other partners can use it and how it can be licensed. So I think it's important to understand what you're going to do with this IP. Some of the organisations didn't want to continue beyond that in terms of the project. Others wanted to share some of the IP that others had created. And it's particularly important. And I don't see why a local authority shouldn't remain part of some of the IP that they've been involved in. Doesn't mean to say they're going to get a revenue stream from it, but they might get other benefits from it. And so I think, horses for courses. You shouldn't give away the IP you've created, you've been part of it, but you have to have a discussion within the project itself as to who owns what and how it might be used in the future.
It's one of the questions we get asked more than anything else, to be honest, when it comes to our competitions, the IP. So it really is important to nail that down at the beginning. Thank you. And then we had a question for Oxford. So LLEWELYN, vendor partners question. Are you worried about vendor lock-in with the partners you've selected? No. It was the long answer.
The current approach has more vendor lock-in than this approach.
Okay.
And we've gone through that. So on the basis that we're trying to be as open as possible to other parties coming in, then there is a risk. There's a risk, but there's less risk than the current approach.
Okay.
So the current approach, you do have vendor lock-in. We've gone 10 years of 2 different vendor lock-ins. So, and it's a very big vendor lock-in that costs you millions of pounds. So, we might have, there's some risk of that in terms of some of the core elements that get developed, but the key thing for us is we are part of the consortium, so we're almost locking ourselves into it as well. So there's different, so this, rather than before where we've paid for ourselves to be locked in, and we have to manage that through contracts. If we're in the consortium, there's more ability to negotiate.
Yeah, okay.
But
it's not something you worry about, though.
It's not. No, it's very. We think we've reduced the risk of it rather than increased it.
Llewellyn, you did say in your slides that you seek to license to others some of the outcomes of the project.
Yeah.
So unless you acquire, you can't license.
Yeah. Well, you license what you develop within the project itself. So it's a bit like the Innovate UK in terms of who owns background IP and new created IP.
But with my commercial hat on, I would make absolutely sure that at the back end, as a service provider, I would, I don't do this as it happens, but some commercial organisations would seek to lock you in so that although your project, at your project level, you own the IPR, but it's critically dependent on some building blocks, and those service providers won't let you have that IPR. So, yeah, I think organisations should recognise that at the start, if possible. Recognise that potential for service provision is in there, and make that hot swappable. Yeah, so that the partners who have got that content that you can't acquire, you just hot swap them in and out, and that's the service delivery and the terms recognise that.
I think, well, those are some of the discussions we've had very early on in the first discussions. It's almost partly why we have different, if you have different partners in there. So some of the partners their skills are there because that's exactly what they do for us as well, on behalf of the consortium as well. So they're almost our knowledgeable client, but they are a client to us.
Experts in that area.
Yeah. Because I think in terms of IP, the biggest problem we have in government, so when we try to talk about IP to our legal, they were like, it's a nightmare, oh my God, it'll just slow things down, just give it away. So that's the problem. I think the skill, we have a legal skill or lack of legal skill in local authority to even understand. So we fund PhD students, and the first ones we funded, we gave that away to the university. The new ones we've just gone through, we've taken 6 months because we've effectively had to go and force legal to go in and ask someone who does know about IP, which there's plenty of people like that in a university town like Oxford, just to get a share. And at the end of the day, it might not be anything, but it's just to say that we're putting investment in and we're really closely supporting them to develop something. We have that in a contract, in an IP legal agreement.
It's a consideration, isn't it? Yeah. And I knew you'd be trouble at the front. Now you've got a mic in your hand. You're going to heckle. We do have the panel later on. So.
It wasn't a heckle. It was a footnote and an observation. Personally, I think that it is a very difficult area. I do commend the open source model because there it's kind of a session musician model. You get paid for drumming on the song, but you don't pick up a royalty. But there's one other advantage of open source, and that is that at the end of it, it's thoroughly peer-reviewed. The trouble particularly with software is that it's not well peer-reviewed if it isn't able to be viewed by the whole world. So there actually are huge advantages to paying people for doing a decent job of work and not paying them ad nauseam for the fact that they did something once 10 years ago.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Right, okay, so you can see how Menti works, hopefully. Keep adding your questions on there, and as Tim unfortunately won't be around for the panel, if you've got questions, you can put them up there.